but Arsenal go to Bramall Lane last night and thump Sheffield United by 6-0. Now, it's now down to Liverpool, City, Arsenal. Is there a ruthless momentum now building behind Arsenal in this title race?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things building behind Arsenal. The emotional intelligence is a question that people ask about their exuberance and their over-celebration, and they look at the season last year and wonder if the emotional intelligence contributed, or lack of emotional intelligence contributed to them ultimately choking at certain times in the course of the season. But going to where they are now, I think that the result that stands out for me is not smashing a hapless Burnley or a useless Sheffield United or out of sorts Crystal Palace, is what they did to Newcastle. Put aside the game against Porto, because they'll right that wrong in the second leg of the tie against Porto at the Emirates. But the manner in which they destroyed Newcastle and made Newcastle look like they weren't even in the game because of the dynamism, the ruthlessness, the overall proficiency of everything Arsenal were doing in that burst of period of time in that game where they destroyed Newcastle, showed me something. Now, the interesting thing for Arsenal is that if the results go their way this weekend, let's say the two guys at the top cancel themselves out with a draw, and Arsenal do to Brentford, which I expect them to do, Arsenal go into a 3-week Premier League break in terms of fixtures, top of the league, and I think if they go top of the league, I think they could win the league.
There you go.
So I think they've got the momentum behind them.
You're saying that for the first time. If they go top of the league, they'll win the league.
I think this time round you will see the emotional intelligence and the change of direction, the signings of Declan Rice and people like that, and the overall resolve inside the side. I think if they hit the top of the league at a time where their destiny is being controlled by them, they will not make the same mistakes.
So I know they've got round the doubters.
I know they've got to play City.
Yeah.
And I think this league will come down to who doesn't slip, because games, I think everyone will beat the sides around them. I think when they play one another, that will be the slippage, and Arsenal can take advantage of that slippage by going top of the league. Now, it's not me all of a sudden flip-flopping over. My gut feel tells me that Man City will win the Premier League and the Champions League, but there's a part of me that looks at it and goes, if these two cancel one another out on the weekend, on Sunday, and Arsenal do their job, they go into a break top of the league, and I do not think they'll make the same mistakes they made last year.
So they're no longer bottlers. What's changed?
They've learnt lessons. Clearly they've learnt lessons, and if you don't learn lessons, there's nothing wrong with making mistakes. There's nothing wrong with learning from the experiences of the past. There's something wrong with not. And I don't like the signing of Kai Havertz. I know he's scoring goals at this moment in time, but I don't think he's added that much value to you for the kind of cash contribution it cost you.
Yeah.
But I think there is an irresistibility. There's an irresistibility. They're an irresistible force right now. The only question is are Manchester City an immovable object? That's the question. When irresistible forces run up against immovable objects, you tend to have an outcome that is almost neutral. I just think that if Arsenal hit the top of the table, there's a distinct possibility they'll stay there.
They'll stay there. Okay, what a line this morning, Simon, and a great positive way to start the show. It's now 21 goals in their past 4 league games, only 1 goal conceded in these 4 matches. Is there a ruthless momentum building behind Arsenal now? Have they won round the doubters? You've heard from Simon there. They've won him round, no longer bottlers. Are you in a similar category in terms of your way of thinking? 03717 223344 81089. Arsenal, is there a ruthless momentum now behind them in this title race? Simon said they won him over to a large extent, no longer the bottlers. A lot has changed. Have they now won round all the doubters out there? Andy, good morning to you, Arsenal fan Andy, and you were at Bramall Lane, I hear. What was your experience last night, mate?
Yeah, look, last night it was a great game, but winning 6-0 away is not easy, but we were playing bottom of the league, and I was just thinking as I was driving, listening to you guys, I think quite a lot of people are getting carried away with Arsenal at the moment. I mean, look, granted, we've done some big results recently, but we've beat a lot of poor teams. If I go back to the beginning of the season, or the first half of the season, we were struggling to beat a lot of teams. We just about got past United at home, just about got past Brentford away, Luton away. We were poor against Chelsea. There's a lot of games this season where we've just scraped through, and I think people are just getting a bit too carried away just because we've won a few games, back-to-back now.
Fair enough. Andy, it sounds to me you're still a bit scarred from last season.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, we were, 8 points clear at one point. I think City had a game in hand, 5 points clear. Yeah, of course, look, we bottled it completely. I think there is a bit of a different element to us this season. I think we're a bit more compact. Obviously, Declan Rice has helped a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously, Saliba did last season, did us over a bit. So I am a bit more, confident this season how we're getting on. But yeah, I think people just get a bit too carried away. That's all.
Andy, it's a good call. Thank you for that. Simon, Declan Rice, many messages coming in. 81089. Declan is this, Declan is that. All positive about that signing. There's one from Rich, the Arsenal fan. What about Declan? What a signing. No one even mentions a £100 million price tag, and there's a reason for that. He's been the difference for us this season. Declan is the difference. So you don't think Jack was a £100 million player going from Villa to City, but do you think Declan is, Simon?
In a bull market, yeah. In a bear market, probably not. I don't think Caicedo is a £100 million footballer. I don't think Enzo Fernandez is a £100 million footballer. But they are because someone's prepared to pay it. I think, in principle, is he a £100 million footballer when you look in your mind's eye at what a £100 million footballer should represent? Probably not. Is he worth £100 million to Arsenal if he's instrumental in part quarterbacking them into a situation where they win the Premier League? Of course he will be. I mean, the difference between £80 million and £100 million, I know it sounds a bit glib, is relatively incidental because an £80 million football is still a vast amount of money. But no, I don't think when you think about players and what you think a £100 million footballer should look like, I'm not sure that Declan Rice falls into that category. But for Arsenal, he's worth the money that they've invested in him. And I said a year ago, and no, not even that, about 6-7 months ago, when I was writing about Arsenal in the summer, that they needed to spend £250 million to stand still.
Yeah,
that may prove to be right because standing still would be finishing third in the league, which is what they did last year, or second, or wherever they finished. So, in order for them to move on, they've got to win the league. And I'm not getting carried away. My main focus on Arsenal, I'm not a convert to Arsenal, they've been a good side for a long time, is the Newcastle game. And I know Newcastle would come off the back of 4 draws at Luton. And by the way, that caller made a point about scrape past Luton. Well, lots of other sides didn't scrape past Luton. Liverpool didn't scrape past Luton at Kenilworth Road. They drew and scored a goal in the last minute. Man City have scraped past them. So using Luton as an example of who you've scraped past in a game for not to get carried away is not necessarily an ideal.
Yeah.
But I'm not carried away with Arsenal. I just think that they've got an opportunity, and I don't think they will make the same mistakes as they made last year. Now, if the other sides win all their games, then that's incidental, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm reminded of the phrase "up the blades" this morning because the blades are anything but up. They're going nowhere in an upward fashion. Sheffield United losing 6-0 at home to Arsenal. But the stats tell their own story, Simon. Rock bottom. Sheffield United's last 4 Premier League home games, an aggregate loss of 21-2. Sheffield United have won 3 from 27 played. They've lost 20. They sit bottom of the Premier League. And Chris Wilder spoke afterwards, and it's got us thinking.
What you'll notice and what you'll see, and maybe you might see a little bit more now, is the introduction of the younger players as well, because I thought we were better. I know the game's gone, and I know Saka comes off and other things, they drop down a level, but, that might be a route. It's been a painful season. It has been real painful season. There's a lot of broken and damaged players out there. This is what the league can do to you, especially when you're off of it and they're on it, and you have to try and close that gap somehow, and when you don't close that gap, they make the gap look huge. So, there's some decisions to be made, of course. I've talked about, there's a lot of other things that are getting reviewed at this particular time for us to get back. The supporters love the football club. I totally understand the supporters that left when they did. We're all hurting at the moment, every one of us. We have to meet, the coaches have got to get together. We've got to see what direction we're going to go in between now and the end of the season. But, we can't have this as just our stock home performance and home result, because, it's just totally unacceptable for them as supporters who love the club and me as manager and leader.
Simon, the last thing he would want to do post-match is to face up to the media, front up and give his reasons as to why that came about last night and where Sheffield United find themselves right now. But his choice of words in there, Chris, will he think later? Yeah, I'm not so sure I got that right. There are a lot of broken and damaged players out there because this is what the league can do to you. No, this is what they've done to themselves, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, you have to give some scenarios regarding Sheffield United that they didn't help themselves at the beginning of the season. There is, a club that wanted to be sold, an owner that doesn't seem to be invested in the club anymore, and some of their best players being sold. in Sanderberg being sold and so on and so forth. So they didn't help themselves, did they? They didn't give themselves an opportunity to be successful as a result of that. But there's a part of me that, if I was mean-spirited, would say it couldn't happen to a nicer fella. But the reality of it is, and I'm not being mean-spirited, so I wouldn't say it.
Why have you got this thing about Wilder?
Because I just don't like what he represents in football management, and that's my view. And I've not got anything. I've not seen anything from him in his managerial career besides his initial assault upon the Premier League, where I thought he was brilliant and a breath of fresh air, and everything that football management should be about. No apologies for being in there. We're here because we merit to be there, and all that sort of stuff. What I see from him now is like a cuckoo standing around waiting for other managers to fall over so he can jump in their jobs. Maybe his mate Paul Heckingbottom might have something to say about how good a friend he thinks he is. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. But the thing about Chris Wilder is that he's supposed to have gone in there and given them the ability to overcome adversity. What a pathetic, snivelling statement that has broken the players. What about adversity? This is what you've got. Your supporters. I'm a great believer that supporters and fans should stay and watch their team. And the key term is supporters. But you've got to give them something to support. So this idea that it was streaming out of the ground after 20 minutes, I'm not surprised, because you can't play the way they're playing at this moment in time. Teams like Arsenal can do this to you. But they've had it done to them on several occasions now, and that's about the culture of the club. He was brought in to make it better. I don't look at Sheffield United's team and think, man for man, that Luton have got a much better side there. I know Russ Barkley's setting the house on fire right now, and it could have gone either way that way. But I don't look at Luton and go, well, you've got much better players with much better culture, and they've got the same challenges.
So what have they got that Sheffield United don't have?
Well, a better manager in my view, and a more galvanised squad of players, which is the manager's responsibility.
You see, you made a very good point earlier on though, Simon. Echoing in all of their ears were Prince Abdullah's comments at the end of last season as they headed to the Premier League. And remember what he told me up in Covent Garden.
I think the last 2 years has been really stressful, not to myself, but also to my family, to my daughters, to my sons. Living like game by game, result by result. It really takes a lot out of you, and I feel tired, I feel exhausted, I feel burned out. I feel that I need to get a break. I told you, and we're on record now, and people in the future may hear this. If I get out of Sheffield United, and even in the future buy another club, I will always be a Sheffield United fan. You can count on that. It got in my heart now. My intention is to sell, but it's not guaranteed yet.
See, are we now witnessing the results of a disengaged owner?
Well, yeah, of course you are, because what you're basically doing is saying that come on now. You got relegated, you bounced straight back up again. You haven't had it that hard. Try spending several years in the Championship. Try owning a football club that you don't get the success from that lots of other owners have had to deal with. Look at Steve Lansdowne at Bristol City. Whether I like him or not, he's been at Bristol City forever and a day, pumping tens of millions of quid and had no upsides.
Yeah.
So quit that whining.
That's true.
The bottom line is...
He threw you out of a boardroom, didn't he?
No, I threw a cup of coffee at him in a boardroom.
Oh, right, sorry.
But that's a different discussion.
That's better.
But the principle of what he said there and the actions that follow it, because then you sell your best players when you go up to the league and you're not invested that heavily, and your only answer is to go back to something that was evidently broken first time round. Heckingbottom may well have had to go, who knows, right? But he went back to something that had been broken previously and been broken by the manager's attitude.
Yes, yeah.
But this owner has not set the pattern. That was a day, I'm telling you now, I don't care how disenfranchised you were. And I was disenfranchised in 2004 when we got promoted. But when we got promoted to the Premier League, I was re-energised. That owner was walking around like, woe is me. You've just got, you've got the keys to the safe by getting into the Premier League.
Just gone up.
So he sets the blueprint. Then ultimately Sheffield United have gone up. They were competitive and they were compact for a period of time. And now they're just a joke. And I feel sorry for their fans, because their fans are... Sheffield United was a club that whenever we played them was a team under Warnock that I always felt that if you could beat Sheffield United, you had something about you. Yeah. And when we did eventually beat them at Bramall Lane once upon a time, we got promoted that season. And there was always this feeling of Sheffield United were a club of substance. Right now, they're a little bit of embarrassment to themselves. Their players, their managers saying that they're broken and can't overcome adversity, I think is pathetic. I do think it's pathetic. I think you need to have some substance and some backbone. And he's building a ready-made excuse in there now. I'll play the kids. Oh, right, okay. So the senior pros can't cope with it. So what you're going to do is expose the kids to it now, are you? Oh, that'll be helpful in their development, won't it? So when they start getting smashed, his idea is that you get around this by not making players be accountable and having substance. Yeah. I'm sorry. In any other walk of life, whether I like Chris Wilder or I don't, this guy should be getting the sack. The performances are poor.
Wilder should be getting the sack.
Well, how can you make a case for him not?
He's only just get the job again.
Well, how can you make a case for him not? If you judge football by the standards that other people judge it, which is when managers come in and the results are so bad, why would he be immune from that conversation? Whether his owner is in part complicit, which I think he absolutely is, I think the club deserves a little bit better than this. And if you're going to go out swinging.
Well, they certainly didn't do that last night in a big way. They went down, and they went down badly last night. And many Sheffield United fans left after about 15, 16 minutes. I mean, were you one of them? Did you give up on your team that soon into the 90 minutes of the game? 03717 223344. If you did, come on and tell us why. Have you chucked it completely? Is that you for the season? Simon says Sheffield United, I'm afraid, have become something of a joke. Sheffield United fans this morning, do you yearn for life back in the Championship? 03717 223344 81089.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.